Well, hello. We're going to talk about the rapture today. We're going to do that because somebody sent in a question that said, "Hey, have you ever done a Monday morning message on the rapture?" And it dawned on me, no, I haven't. So we probably should talk about it because it's talked about in YouTube, Facebook, X, pulpits everywhere, prophecy seminars. It is proclaimed as the truth. And there are many different versions of the rapture. We're going to look at some of these, but the main view is that sometime Christians will just disappear from the earth, will be raptured, will be snatched away by Jesus. And then there'll be, most people teach, then there will be a period of tribulation on the earth, about 7 years. Then Jesus will come back with his saints and establish his millennial reign. Now that's called dispensational premillennialism, and that's the main version of the doctrine of the rapture. The problem is, it's not found in Scripture. The word rapture isn't even found in Scripture. Not in the Greek, not in the Hebrew, no version of it is there. The words used don't mean rapture, it means to snatch, to take away. And we applied this word to it. A guy by the name of John Nelson Darby really popularized the word rapture and started this idea back in 1830 or the 1830s. And there were a few before him, but Darby's systematic work of it really made it take off in evangelical circles and in fundamentalist circles. You will find this in fundamentalist Baptist churches, some Southern Baptist churches. You'll find it in some Methodist denominations, not United Methodist, but the smaller breakaway Methodist, they wouldn't think they're breakaway, but work with me, denominations. You'll find it in the Brethren churches. But you'll also find it in a lot of non-denominational churches. It has picked up a lot in there. And it is taught in various different forms and the like. It is, again, not really supportable in Scripture. But it makes people very, very excited, and therefore they like to use it. Early on, these passages in First Thessalonians and in Matthew had made some people wonder, really, what is he talking about? Augustine of Hippo. I'm not a huge Augustine fan, by the way, and I've made that clear. He's the one who gave us hell as eternal conscious torment, and he gave us a lot of problems like that. But he believed that everybody had to die. So when Jesus comes back, and First Thessalonians says that we who are alive will not go before those who are dead, I think Paul's just saying respect is given to those who died, and so they go up, and then we go up to see Jesus. Augustine said, well, we can't escape death. So when the dead people come to life and go up, then we have to die, and then we're immediately snatched up into heaven. Way to read way too much into it. There's, and again, far too many assumptions, using a whole lot of Greek philosophy from Plato and Philo that didn't really need to come into play. Dispensational premillennialists believe that there are two events, the rapture and the second coming, that they are not the same. That they, according to this view, 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verses 15 through 17, is referring to the rapture. It's a premillennium event. And then Matthew chapter 24, verses 29 through 31, is talking about the end time, the second, when Jesus comes back to earth to establish his earthly kingdom. Who teaches this? Well, there are some famous ones, such as Walter Dunn. N.T. Wright has a very small version of this, but it's very different. So N.T. Wright is an amillenniarian. That means that doesn't believe there is a premillennial reign or any millennial reign. By the way, I don't either. I believe that these are symbolic and metaphoric passages that are taken way out of context, and that Matthew 24 is talking about the fall of Jerusalem in 70 AD. I believe I have good evidence for this, and certainly a lot more evidence than something built around the word rapture, which isn't even found in Scripture. But you will find amillennialism has been the doctrine of the church for a long time. It was not until the 1830s that this idea of rapture came. In the 1830s and the early 1800s were just this cauldron of new religions. You get everything from the Restoration churches, the Stone Campbell movement, Churches of Christ, Christian churches, Disciples of Christ, to Mormons, to Seventh-day Adventists, to Christian Scientists, to all sorts of millenarian sects, and also all kinds of secular type end of the world communes, such as the Oneida Community, New Harmony, and many others. They exploded all over the West, but particularly in the US and in England. Dispensationalists came out of this. And in fact, in the Churches of Christ, one of their leading lights in the very early years was Alexander Campbell. And his first paper he put out, I believe monthly, whatever it was, to inform the world of his restorationist views was called Millennial Harbinger. In other words, this is letting you know the millennium is right on top of us. And it was merely one of many, many false predictions or prophecies about a coming millennium. I mentioned N.T. Wright, so I want to clean that up. He does not believe that there's going to be this dispensational premillennialism. He believes instead that Christians will be moved to a safe place on earth for a particular time. His views, I don't think, are entirely well fleshed out, which is very unusual for N.T. Wright. I think he's absolutely brilliant. And I would hate to go against him in a big theological fistfight. I think I would lose that one handily. But I'm just not sure where he's going with that one. Again, what's going on in 1 Thessalonians 4, the writer is just saying, be ready because Jesus is going to take us away. He's coming. They felt very certain in the early years of the church that Jesus was coming right back. And they wrote that way and they acted that way to the point where 2 Thessalonians, the writer has to say, go back to work, because people were stopping work. They're getting rid of their stuff and just waiting for Jesus to come back. And he's going, no, go ahead and be Christian, live out your life. But they still expected him to be right back. Matthew 24 is a whole different animal. Jesus is walking and he sees the temple and he says, you see these wonderful things. There's going to come a time where one stone's not going to be on top of the other. And they're going, well, when's that going to happen? And you can go to our midweek Bible studies and look up Matthew 24 and find me going through that in a lot more detail than I can go through it on a Monday morning with our limited time here. But Jesus answers two questions. One, when will the time of this temple being all torn apart be? And two, when will be the signs of the end of the age, the end of the world? Jesus answers both of them, but he mainly answers the first one, the destruction of the fields and destruction of the city and destruction of the temple, and how you have to flee and one person's taken, the other one's left, and you've got to, don't go back into town if you see the eagles gathering. Well, the Romans had eagle standards as they marched in. You know, run and pray that you're not pregnant, or it's not a Sabbath where you're not allowed to go too far. Yeah, that was a problem back then. He talks a lot about that. And then he talks about the end of time. No man knows when that's coming, not even the Son, only the Father. So they have conflated all this and then gone to Revelation, Daniel, and they've tried to put all of this together to make some sort of mathematical, weird, philosophical, theological train wreck that then tries to make, the devil's chained up here, and then we have this 7 years, this, and it is endlessly confusing. And that's why there are so many different variants of it. Premillennialist views, the most striking point is they believe there is a visible reign of Christ on earth, but there are also wars against the evil on earth. So somehow the pictures of Revelation with blood and swords and such must come true, where Christians are armed and face off against the evil ones. That does not sound like the Sermon on the Mount, frankly, and I don't think you can pick this up from the life of Christ. The premillennial, pre-tribulation position says that the rapture occurs before the 7 years. But there's also the mid version. And then there's the post version, all of these. And again, John Nelson Darby published in 1827, but it really took off in the 1830s. He held seminars. William Blackstone wrote a book called Jesus is Coming, which that was in 1878, and sold 1.3 million books, which would be like selling 10 million books today. It was staggering. By the way, the last revision of that, I think, was in 1967. So copies are still out there. During the 1970s, this became hugely popular. And I remember this. I remember being in high school and then early university, and copies, dog-eared copies, passed around of The Late Great Planet Earth. Remember that? Hal Lindsey? Or The Cross and the Switchblade? Or the movie A Thief in the Night, which was based upon all of this. It was all about the rapture's imminent. Take a look at this. Take a look at the Soviet Union. Take a look at the West. It's obvious. It's obvious. It's coming now. And in fact, the number of times that I talk to people and they say, well, it's so obvious that this is the end times. And inside I just cringe, because people have been saying that for literally 2,000 years. Again, they can't agree upon when it's going to occur, how long it's going to be. A lot of the mid-tribulational premillennial people say, we're going to be stuck in this war for 3.5 years, then we're going to be taken out. Then there's going to be 3.5 years where it's just the evil people fighting, and then Jesus comes back. All of this is being put together from some strange prophecies in Daniel, where he talks about 70 weeks, and then a midweek where this will happen. And they try to make this 70 ages, or these are years, but this is an age. There's no consistency, none. There's no context. They don't take it in context. Where was this written? By whom was it written? To whom was it written? Why was it written? They don't go into that. They apply everything to us as if all the universe is all about us, and it isn't all about us. Post-tribulationists will be people like John Piper. He believes that we will go through all of it and then we'll be raptured. It's not in there. In fact, post-millennialism believes that the millennium will come, and maybe has come. That's a trick sometimes they use. But they believe that the Great Tribulation was the Roman Jewish wars of 66 to 73 AD. Again, okay, but I'm just not sure it's necessary. People have been pushing this for a long time. William Miller pushed it in 1843, and his followers were many. Again, the early 1800s, this stuff was everywhere. And he convinced his followers that Jesus was coming back between 21 March 1843 and 21 March 1844. And then Jesus didn't show up. So he said, I just miscalculated the Bible. It's going to be 22nd October 1844. And when that didn't happen, it was called, and this is in capital letters, and you can look it up, the Great Disappointment. A lot of people were rocked by this. But his movement kept going. And I've never been able to understand this. The people that make these false prophecies constantly still have followers. The books that didn't come to pass, they just write new books, and the same people buy them time after time after time. So William Miller's followers are the Advent people. Seventh-day Adventists come from this, a man whose prophecies continually failed. By the way, there's one group that says he didn't fail, but it's not a Christian group. The Baha'i people say that, yes, he did come back as Bab, B-A-B, this great spiritual leader came back and has established his kingdom on earth. It's a bit of a reach, I'll give you that. There were many dates by Charles Russell, the founder of Jehovah's Witnesses. He and Judge Rutherford, his successor, they put out 1914, 1918, 1925. Then they shoved it way back into the mid-1970s and said, we're really sure about this one. And when that didn't happen, a whole lot of people left the Jehovah's Witnesses. So the Jehovah's Witnesses changed tactics and went after minorities, and they found people there that didn't know about all the false prophecies, and they've been very, very successful at hiding this. In fact, a lot of their books, they would, if you have any of their old books, they would love to get those from you because they do not want those out there. There are others. Chuck Smith in 1981, do you remember him? He said that Jesus would return. And then I remember this one so well. 1988, I'd just come back to the States, and Edgar Weisnett wrote 88 Reasons Why the Rapture Will Be in 1988. That little booklet was everywhere. There were billboards pushing it. It made the television. It was all over, and Jesus didn't show up in 1988. Then Harold Camping, remember him? Huge evangelical presence. Had radio broadcast and all the other, and he pushed that Jesus was coming back on 21 May 2011. And when he didn't, he said he really did, but it was a spiritual coming back. The Jehovah's Witnesses did the same thing with their 1975. And a lot of these groups will then say, well, he did, but you just missed him, you know. And then Harold Camping made the mistake of saying on 21 October 2011, the physical will happen, and that didn't happen, of course. There was a Christian numerologist, whatever that means, named David Meade, no relation, I hope, who said it was going to come on September of 2017. Friends, after a while, the old Charlie Brown and Lucy with the football, you got to pull back. Will there be a rapture snatching away? I find no evidence of it. I find it's a misuse of prophecies, a misunderstanding of context, a torturing of the language. But what if you believe all of it? Okay. As long as we believe that Jesus is the Christ and we follow him as best we can, nobody does 100% the best they can, but we follow him and we walk after him, we're going to be all right. And arguing about all these things and starting new churches over these things and writing books saying this is what God says, when we could be feeding the poor, we could be clothing the naked, we could be visiting the prisoners, we could be taking care of the sick, we could be doing what we were told to do instead. I would just recommend that you spend your time there, because if you start going down these little rabbit holes, I'm not sure you're ever going to come back up, and that would be tragic. I hope you don't have a tragic week. I hope things go well for you. Thank you for writing in. Write in other questions, and if this gives rise to questions, fire away. Patrick@oursafeharbor.com. We're here for you, and I really appreciate those of you